GBN Television News at 7, a pulse on all things Grenadian. Look out for our new features through expanded synergies with our media partners in Barbados, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Trinidad, and beyond. Capturing the latest in news, sports, weather, and entertainment. Credible, informative. Thank you for making us number one. News at 7, live, Monday to Friday on GBN Television, Channel 7 and 11. K105.5 and 105.9, Hot 98.5 and 98.7, GBN Television Facebook page and YouTube channel, and www.gbn.gd. GBN, with you anywhere and everywhere.
Special good morning to our listeners via Classical Radio, whether you're listening to 105.5 or 105.9. Good morning. Those of you via GBN Television, whether you're viewing Channel 7, Channel 11 or Channels 20, good morning. Our social media listeners and viewers, good morning. Whether you're via the Facebook page, the YouTube channels, good morning and welcome. It's To The Point today, Thursday, the 29th day of June. Good morning once again. With me, of course, on Thursdays, you know we do entertain various departments within the Grenada Police Force, and this morning we have the the Community Relations Department. Just get it right, the Community Relations Department with me this morning, and I have with me ASP Simon Douglas. Good morning to you, sir, and also Corporal Sherwin Noel. Good morning to both of you, and welcome to The Point this morning.
Good morning to you, sir, and good morning to your viewers and listeners, and thank you for having us.
All right.
Good morning to you and your viewers and listeners.
All right. This morning our focus of conversation will be on the Noise Control Act. That's what we're going to spend some time talking about that. It's important because, you know, we're getting to that particular time of the year, carnival season, and, you know, all the activities that would lead up to where individuals may want to get to the opportunity to, you know, play music and stuff like that, especially when it comes to amplified music. So we're going to spend some time to inform the public, especially individuals who may be interested, you know, in having events. There's a process that they have to go through in order to do these things, especially when you're going to be having amplified music. So we're going to start it off this morning. Let's just get some starting remarks from both of you in terms of the especially when it comes to the application process. Let's have a bit of course, chit chat about that.
Well, first of all, we'd like to indicate to the public that noise in Grenada is controlled by the Noise Control Act. It can be found in Chapter 211A of Volume 10 of the Laws of Grenada. Mm-hmm. Right? And to let the nation know as well that for those of us who don't take time to think of it, noise can be extremely disturbing or annoying to anyone. Right? It becomes a greater nuisance, especially at nights, and to persons who are attempting to sleep, trying to study, and so forth. I've known of complaints where persons said that they had important exams next morning and they couldn't study because a neighbor was playing loud music and so forth. All right, senior citizens, people with health challenges and so forth are most significantly affected by excessive noise, and that of course is due to their fragile state.
Yes.
Noise can make someone sick. And of course, if a person is already sick, depending on their condition, the noise can worsen their sickness or their condition. So we want to start off by making a special appeal to the public, everyone, to be considerate, right? Consider the old person or the aged person in your community, or it may not be your community. Persons driving vehicles, you may be driving through a community late at night, and you have to be considerate enough to turn down your music if it was loud and things of that sort. And you really want persons to cooperate in that regard.
All right. Certainly happy that you go in that particular direction, especially when it comes to folks. I mean, it's becoming a problem for me as an individual. There's someone who drives through my neighborhood every night, every single night, officer, and for some reason would just turn his music up when he comes to that particular area. Every single night, just around 11 p.m. And you think how disturbing that could be. You probably get into a process where you're into deep sleep already, and then you just jump up. My children will jump up from time to time, and it's becoming annoying. And I've got to the point where I confronted an individual once or twice, and I just couldn't, because I realized it doesn't make any difference. You understand? I just continue to do it, and certainly hope something we done with that.
We're going to tell you this morning how a difference can be made.
How a difference can be made. Yes. All right. Well, let's kick it off this morning in terms of the process, because let's say as I mentioned in my intro, that the season is coming up where carnival activities, not even carnival alone, but any activity that needs amplified music. What's the process individuals need to go through in order to get that permission, you could say, in order to have amplified music?
Well, Corporal Noel will tell us first of the two types of permits that can be obtained, that needs to be obtained in order for certain noises to be made.
All right, let's go.
Good morning again. There are only two types of permits that are issued in relation to, what we say noise or excessive noise. If excessive noise, is to be made, and they fall under two categories: construction work, meaning if a contractor or someone doing construction work, is of the opinion that the work being done would create excessive noise or disturb any person or any institution within the community, then it's their duty to apply to the Minister of Health, to sought permission to commence that work.
All right. Let me just ask a question in between this. So let's say there's a construction company, they want to start construction maybe next to a school or even in a community. They have the use of heavy equipment, the use of maybe the drilling, the compactors and stuff like that has to be used. You stated that permission needs to be sought in order to go for that process to continue to go ahead.
Of course, you need to seek permission, and due consideration needs to be given to what is taking place immediately around the area where that activity is taking place. Right. The other type of permit that is issued is in relation to loudspeakers and musical instruments.
All right.
So someone intending to have a party, a dance, or maybe a queen show, they intend to use loudspeaker or amplified sounds, need to apply to the Commissioner of Police for permission to use that equipment or that musical instrument.
All right. So you're stating that there are two bodies so for construction you need to go to the Ministry of Health.
Of course.
And for individuals wanting to use amplified music for a particular event, they need to come to the
our musical instrument. Take for instance,
let's say a church.
You might pass, yes, or you might pass through a community and someone always blowing that trumpet and creating that loud set of what we call noise. They need to apply for permission.
All right. No, let's go through the process of it. How the information that is needed to be supplied to you or the health department for that. How does that process go ahead?
And before I answer your question specifically, allow me to just take a moment to explain a few things about noise. All right. According to the law, I did indicate what act is governed under. Noise means sound and may include vibration.
Okay.
So that definition is very general. It means any kind of sound,
All right.
right? And it also can include vibration.
And despite whatever is supplying the noise, is considered.
Whatever is causing making that sound is controlled under this act.
Okay.
Right? Noise pollution is the major issue under the act. And noise pollution means any harmful or annoying sound or vibrations or sound that amounts to a nuisance.
Okay.
Right? And what is a nuisance? An unreasonable interference with the rights of another person.
All right.
Right? So I think from those definitions, it's easy to understand how simple it is to commit an offense under this act. If you make any sound that unreasonably interferes with the rights of any other person, then you can be committing an offense.
If I'm quarreling too long.
Any sound, yes. Right? But we don't normally consider these types of noises to be offensive under this act. But they are, or they can be, because the law says any sound.
All right.
All right? Even if you're doing something legitimate. I used an example yesterday of somebody using a vacuum cleaner. If it is extremely loud, for example, it may have some kind of fault that makes it very loud and is disturbing neighbors, it can be considered an offense.
So in committing those offenses, how does an individual report that into the police? We say, I'm having a problem with my neighbor using the vacuum. I'm having a problem with my neighbor who starts his vehicle very early in the morning and for some reason he has to rev that engine. You know, how does the department see that?
Okay. A complaint is made in the same manner as any other complaint being made to the police. The difference with this act is that it may require a little more from you as a complainant in order for a successful investigation and ultimately prosecution.
All right. So evidence that is you've been disturbed for some reason.
Yes, right. And most of the times the police officers themselves do not witness the disturbance, do not hear the loud noise and so forth. So a neighbor or a person experiencing it, being disturbed by it, would be required to make that complaint. If the police does not witness it themselves, then they would be required to issue the person a notice.
Okay.
A notice directing them to either lower the volume of the sound or to stop it completely. Right? The Commissioner of Police has that authority, and of course that authority is delegated to his subordinates.
All right.
So any police officer can issue a notice. But after that notice is issued, if the disturbance, if the nuisance continues, that person or any other person, so it doesn't have to be the same person as the first complaint, any other person needs to complain again, and then the police can charge that person under those circumstances.
Okay.
It is different if the police officer experiences that disturbance himself. Then he can.
Then he take the necessary
action,
steps
yes.
that or the action that needs to be taken.
All right.
All right.
So the application process, and I want to start off by making it very clear that an application, according to the law, an application for a noise permit must be made at least 10 days before the intended day of the event or activity.
All right.
All right? And I also want to make it clear to the public that should your application get to the police later than 10 days before the intended day of your event or activity, your application may not be considered. All right? We want to make that clear. It is not a case of the police not wanting to give people permission or the police wanting to interrupt or interfere with people having fun or people making a dollar, as we say it. But we must consider the fact that numerous persons would send in applications.
Yes.
And if you do not give us enough time to process those applications, then we would have a problem. All right? Because there are lots of things that need to be done. For one, we need to vet the venue. We need to vet the applicant or the person on whose behalf they're applying. All right? So someone can apply for a permit on their own behalf or on behalf of someone else, on behalf of a group, a company, and so forth. Right? So the police needs to be satisfied that the character of those persons involved in that event are not questionable.
All right.
Right? So on that application, it must be a written application. On that application must be the name, the address of the applicant,
Okay.
the venue of the intended event, right? The time within which you intend to host that event. Because the permit will tell you what time you're allowed to play that amplified music. So you must let us know what time you intend to before we can make a decision as to what time we allow you to. We're not going to tell you you want to have a function from 6 in the evening to midnight, and we tell you your event must take place from midday to 6.
Okay.
But you may apply for a period of time that in all the circumstances may be considered excessive,
Yes.
right? And you may not be granted that length of time.
I guess after you have vetted the location
Yes.
and so forth.
After a proper assessment of the entire circumstances are conducted, right? So, for example, what's happening around that location? Whether or not there are other persons applying for permits, because you may have, for example, a festival in an area, right? Whether it's a recognized festival or not, there are a lot of little things that people are having in communities now that they consider festivals. It has become a norm. So, should you want to have an event, I have a good example. In the town of Victoria, some years ago when I worked there, 3 different persons wanted to have permission to play music in one area, in a little junction.
How would that be possible?
Everybody has a business in that general area. And what I met with the persons involved, discussed the issue, and I said to them, we cannot have 3 different DJ sets playing in this one little area. It's just going to be chaos. And none of you are going to be happy with what's happening because you may not be able to hear your music properly and so forth. So we came to an agreement that there is going to be one system playing the music.
Okay.
The different applicants will each have a period within which they play what music they want to play. All right, and it worked out well. So all these things need to be considered. All right. So the purpose for which you want to have the activity, it's not just I want permission to play music. The commissioner must know what you want to have. He cannot blindly issue a permission. You may want to have an illegal activity, and then you would say, well, the commissioner gave me permission to play the music.
That's interesting.
Right? Yes. So all these things are necessary, right? And like I said, the application must be made at least 10 days before the activity. It should be delivered to the police station nearest to the area where you intend to have that activity.
All right.
So that's the application process.
All right, let's take a break. We're coming right back. It's moving down to 18 minutes after the hour, folks. It's to the point for today, Thursday, the 29th of June. We're coming right back, folks. Stay with us. Don't touch it down.
At the NIS, our team proudly works to support the evolving needs of Grenadians. We have made some changes to our operations and want to keep you informed. Firstly, we are happy to introduce the new unemployment benefit. This benefit will provide an insured person with 50% of his or her former income in the case of sudden unemployment. To support this benefit and other benefits we offer, it was necessary to increase the contribution rate. The contribution rate will increase gradually each year until it reaches 16% in 2031. As always, the contribution will be split between you and your employer. The pensionable age will also increase from 60 to 65 years. This increase will also be gradually reaching age 65 in 2029. Pensioners will continue to be eligible for a pension from age 60, but will receive a reduced payment. The NIS recognizes that the prices of basic customer goods are increasing globally. Therefore, we are happy to also increase the weekly minimum pension payment by 25%. Finally, we have adjusted our survivor's benefit payment to a percentage of the age pension minimum. Widows, widowers, and dependent parents will receive 100% or $58 weekly, while children will receive 50% or $29 weekly of the deceased's pension. We are here to make the transition to these new changes as clear and simple as possible. If you have any questions on how these changes impact you and your family, please contact our new informational hotline at 440-6647 or visit www.nisgrenada.org. Thank you for allowing us to be your social security provider.
Big money, money, money. $3,000 every week for 3 months.
What?
Yes, it's the NLA's Crazy Cash Giveaway Promotion. Every week from April 11th to June 30th, 3 lucky Daily Games customers will randomly win $1,000 each week. Imagine winning as much as $36,000 in 12 weeks.
How?
Spend $12 in a single purchase on Daily Cash 4, Daily Pick 3, or Playway. Look for the words Cash Winner on your tickets to collect $1,000. The more you spend $12 on your favorite daily games, the more chances you have to win. Must be 18 or older to participate. All prizes must be collected by July 7th, 2023. Other terms and conditions apply. See stores for details. NLA, making your dreams come true. Big money, money, money.
Let me say welcome back to our listeners and viewers. It's to the point for today, Thursday the 29th. We have the Community Relations Department of the RGPF with us this morning. We have with us this morning ASP Douglas and Corporal Sherwin Noel. Once again, welcome back, officers, and it's to the point. Once again, our listeners and viewers, good morning. We kicked off the conversation this morning in terms of the application process. We spoke about that. And from the application process, it moves to now the conditions in which that particular permit will be granted for an individual wanting to the permission to have a particular event. Who's going to explain that this morning?
Yes, once again, good morning. Granting a permission without giving conditions would be like, purchasing equipment or so without a manual. So it's quite necessary.
I agree.
So we want to just make it clear that one of the first conditions would be that the granting of the permission to operate musical instruments shall not be deemed to constitute an authorization to create or maintain a significantly higher volume of sound than is reasonably necessary to satisfy the primary purpose for which the musical instrument is being operated. So that says that we cannot just give you permission to play music at any volume, but you must play, reasonably, or play at a volume that would satisfy the primary purpose. For instance, if you're playing music for you and your friends in this room, it doesn't mean that I should be outside and hearing it.
Okay.
We know that you cannot control the song and cover up the song if songs run off. So we expect that people in the immediate vicinity might be affected, but we don't want it to be excessive. Secondly, the musical instrument shall not be operated in such a manner that, by reason of the level of noise emitted, is unreasonably disturbance. All right? So persons participating or attempting to participate in religious meetings or religious service or any function of a religious nature, whether or not the premise being used or sought to be used for the religious function on the occasion in question, are normally used for religious functions. That means that if the Adventist Church decide to have a crusade in the town of St. George on Saturday or whatever day, and they decide they have permission to use in front of the mall, and you having a session, let's say on Granby Street, you should not disturb them, not because they are not accustomed being there, but the mere fact that they're having that function, you should be reasonable, so you shouldn't disturb them.
Okay.
Or even if they are in the church and you have permission, then you have to control the level of sound that you have coming from whatever equipment that you are using. That should not create unreasonable disturbance.
All right.
So thirdly, persons living or residing in the neighborhood. And this one is simple. You should not be selfish. You know, because as the ASP said in his opening remarks, we may have elderly citizens, we may have people wanting to study, persons who are, you know, unwell, and so on. So the musical instrument shall not be operated within the compound of or near to a hospital, health center, clinic, or any premise used either ordinarily or occasionally as a daycare center for young children. Within the compound of or near to a school during school hours or the hours during which evening classes are held, in such a manner that the level of noise given off unnecessarily disturbs any person in the hospital, health center, clinic, or daycare center, or interferes with the holding of any class at a school, as the case may be. So this one just covers generally the issue about disturbing, you know, the schools and the hospital and so on. So, you know, sometimes your distance may be far off. I don't want to call like areas to disturb anybody that might be applying for permission, but your distance may be far off. But the wind direction and stuff you would have to consider, because the music could generally affect persons in the hospital. And they would say
some travels, so you understand, that would say that.
So you would have to control your volume, and from time to time you may find that, you know, you're so far away, but the police still come to you and tell you, well, you know, you turn down the music. And these are things that you as the organizer should really have in the back of your mind. You know, how far-reaching is the effects of what you are doing. So let's go on. There shall not be obstruction to the free flow of traffic, nor other traffic regulations shall be violated. No other traffic regulation shall be violated. So it's your responsibility as the organizer or the promoter to ensure that you have adequate security or police officers employed to maintain that free flow of traffic. Normally what you'll find happening, without proper security or policing, you'll find vehicles parking on either side of the road, yes, and leaving one lane for the traffic to flow. Vehicles coming up and down would have to take turns, and still you would find someone stopping in the middle of that traffic to collect a beer, to talk to a friend, and so on, as the case may be. That should not occur. And these are conditions, so let's go ahead. The validity of the permit, including the terms and conditions, may be modified or cancelled by the issuing authority for the maintenance of law and order, or for any valid reason without serving prior notice to the applicant.
Explain that a bit.
So a fight break out in your fet. A fight break out in your fet. It's uncontrollable. People getting injured, you know, or we have first fight breakout and second fight, and we come to the function. We cannot tell you there and then, okay, we go close down the fet later because it's causing unreasonable disturbance or yes, the person's lives are being endangered. We have to stop it there and then. Or the conditions could change. So we say, okay, we give you up to 10 o'clock, but you close now, or you close at 9. So the terms and conditions are, we could cease the event from, close down the event immediately. So the terms and conditions can be modified there and then without prior notice. Yeah?
And that is only in the instance where there's something that has caused a violation for reference, for a violation that can happen. Yeah. The permit could be terminated. All right.
So steps must be taken to ensure that the activity is violent free. That steps could be either you employ security, you put other measures in place, you have searches, or the type of music you might be playing. We know that music do influence certain activities, certain actions, and so you as the promoter, you have a big responsibility. This permit is void immediately if used in conjunction with any illegal activity or unlawful assembly. So, okay, your intention would have been to have a nice screen show, but people didn't turn out, and you have striptease in the place. The police come to the scene, and you never had a permit.
For such an event.
For such an event. So,
or you were supposed to be a kids event, but you had to start selling alcohol. All of that comes into play.
Of course. So we sharing information and we enlightening people as well, because a lot of people make applications just thinking that I just applying, and if I get permission, that is it. The party will go on, and at the end of the party, I'm not responsible for anything, but you have a big responsibility. All right. So the permit must be produced for inspection forthwith, if so required by a police officer, failure of which the operations of the musical instrument shall immediately cease. And that is the laws. I didn't just come here and say that because I feel like saying it. It's the laws. But police officers that we know over the years have been so reasonable that they would go to the function, they would ask for your permission, and you apply for your permission, but you didn't collect it on time. So,
but you still continue to have the event.
Well, yes, you still continue to have the event, because maybe you get word from somebody, yes, that the permission was granted. And then now we would have to go and do the research to make phone calls and find out, was this permission granted? Did this person obtain permission? But the law says, but yes, we are still so reasonable. So that is what the law says. So if a police officer come to your event and ask you to produce the permit, and you don't have it, and he says that, okay, the instruction is that you cease. You should.
But is it that till you come back with the permit, or it's just totally?
Well, if you have the permit, you should have.
Or maybe it's at another location. You have to go get it and come back.
So that is just a reminder that if you produce it, you should produce it upon request. So if you say you have it, then the officer may be considerate and say, okay, I'm giving you time to go and get the permit, or to get the permit and produce it. Like maybe, and that wouldn't be 48 hours, because by then
will be
a reasonable time. Right. So on to the next condition. A second warning by officers, as pointed out by the ASP of the Royal Grenada Police Force, as to the noise being unreasonable, would result in confiscation of equipment and the closing down of the said activity. So two things. And it could be a big loss for you as a promoter or as someone hosting an event. You confiscate the equipment and you close down the activity. Two things. And that is the law. So drinks, again, must be served in paper cups. You can't say plastic, because we ban plastic. Yeah, so drinks must be served in paper cups, and that is a step that can be taken to ensure that your incident is violent free.
Could it also occur that where the police could step in and say, well, I may have to shut down your event because you're selling drinks in bottles when you should not be?
Well, these are the conditions. Yes, and if you violate any of the conditions, so let me go further, because this point I'm going to make here now would come to that. Failure to comply with these conditions will result in cancellation of this permit and render you liable to criminal prosecution. So, cancellation of the permit. If you fail to comply, you're selling drinks in the bottles, and it says that you should sell it in paper cups, you violate the permit, the conditions of the permit, and as a result, it can result in cancellation of the permit and you being liable to criminal prosecution, so you can get charged, as we say otherwise.
So the condition that you have just stated is important for individuals, promoters, etc., who want to have an event to follow these conditions strictly.
Strictly. I believe that, the police or the people who set these conditions, they were not whooping, they carefully assess what is taking place and came up with these guidelines
All right.
or these conditions to ensure that your event, and it's a guide for you to ensure that your event is safe. And it's not only about the music we are looking at, because we're looking at the music, which is the primary focus of this document is the noise. And here we are looking at general safety for patrons to your event. So we're looking at the noise, how it would affect the immediate community, the people in the immediate vicinity, and how the noise can influence other behavior and conduct. And in doing so, you have a part to play should, in case the situation becomes chaotic, then you have a responsibility to control that as well, including the road conditions and the free flow.
So you're saying a promoter who's unable to of course control the conditions that have been laid out by the permit, and fight occurs, the illegal use of course, I would say illegal, but drinks have been sold in bottles and not paper cups, not setting the proper conditions in terms for the security levels, he didn't hire the proper security and so forth. All that conditions could be come out where that an event could be cancelled for those violations.
You have it.
Before we move on, I would like to make mention of, as Corporal Noel spoke of the disturbance of hospitals and schools and so forth. One of the things that we don't do a lot is highlight the positives. And I want to use this opportunity to commend the management of the Rum Runner.
Yes.
I've been on several cruises, and they would announce once they're in the area of the hospital, the music could be played very low until they get out of that area and to be turned up. So they announce it, and they actually do that, and I want to commend them for that.
All right, great. So true. As we move on now, we getting to the part where this could be a little bit of a tricky situation, especially promoters, people who have equipment and so forth. Thompson, give me some of the conditions that would lead to confiscation of equipment.
Okay. Once the conditions of a permit are being breached, or once a person is making noise without a permit, they would be either notified that they may be charged, or notified that they should abate that nuisance, meaning either stop the noise completely, and we're referring mostly to music here. So either they stop the music completely, or they turn it down to a volume that does not constitute a nuisance, right? So Section 7 of the Act deals with that. And it basically says that once the commissioner is satisfied that noise amounting to a nuisance either exists, and interestingly, or is likely to occur. So it has not happened yet. All right?
Okay.
You're in a community and you notice that somebody is setting up speaker boxes and so forth, and you can tell that they're preparing for some kind of function. And you can speak to the police. Does this person have a permit to play music? If not, then the police can give a notice to that person to let them know that you are not allowed to play that music. So it hasn't started yet, right? Or is likely to recur. So if it had happened and stopped, it already stopped, but the police can still give you a notice to say you shouldn't do it again.
All right, I did it last week and I got away with it.
Right.
Probably I could try it this week again.
Right. Or if it's actually happening, that it should not continue. Okay? Once the commissioner is satisfied of any of those, right, the officer will issue, and by the commissioner here, I'm not speaking to the commissioner himself, but as I said earlier, that authority is delegated to all police officers.
Okay.
So the police officer would issue a notice to the person. It's called an abatement notice. So that person is required to either reduce or stop completely.
All right. How many times would an individual have to be notified before we get to the stage of the equipment being confiscated?
From the second occasion, your equipment can be confiscated.
Okay. So they give you that first notice.
Yes. Once you had received that first notice, the police comes back, and you're again in breach. On this occasion, the officer should inform you that you will be charged for an offense.
Right. What about individuals within their home, or individual who uses the equipment at home, may not for his own personal use? And how does that process work also?
Right. It doesn't matter where you're playing the music, where you're making the noise. The difference is, in the cases of activities like parties designed for dancing and that sort of thing, those are circumstances where you can be charged on first instance, or at first instance. So if the police comes and find that you're playing music in a party setting and you had not obtained the permission, you do not need to be given a notice. You can be charged immediately.
Right.
In the case of the house, which is different, then you'd be given a notice to either stop the music or turn down the volume. If a second occasion you're found to be doing the same thing, then you'd be issued that you'd have been issued a notice before. On the second occasion, that equipment.
So is there any penalties? Is there any penalties that come across for that also?
Of course, every charge has a penalty that comes with it.
I'm speaking in the sense when after your music has been confiscated and taken away, is there a penalty for that?
So remember, I said that on the second occasion you would be charged. You should be charged.
Okay.
And along with being charged, the equipment will be confiscated by the police, and all the equipment involved in the musical system.
All right.
So the speakers, the wires, the turntables, the computers, whatever it is that is being used as part of that system. And it matters not who it belongs to. All right? Once it's being used in that process of creating a nuisance, then it's taken to court. So the charges along with the equipment, and then the court may forfeit that equipment to the state. So you lose it completely. In addition to your fine or your imprisonment, all the equipment is taken away from you completely. That's how it works.
All right. We due for a break again, officers. We got to take that break. When we come back, we continue with more of the conversation. Stay with us, folks. It's to the point for today, Thursday the 29th. We stay with us, folks. We're coming right back.
Chaos and LED. Get on us, Lord. Grenada are the best ones by far. Grenada are the best job in the whole wide world. Grenada are the best ones by far. Grenada are the best job in the whole wide world. Watch Mass and watch my canal. Soca gone international. That's going around the globe. Soca not just for carnival. Watch Mass and watch my canal. Soca gone international. That's going around the globe.
Whoa, whoa. Rock the box, we say, yeah. GBN, we say, arts and culture living, yeah. Rock the box, we say. I'm telling you, rock the box, rock the box, rock the box, we say. I'm telling you, rock the box, rock the box, rock the box, we say. We'll be jamming here on a Thursday.
You mentioned the wing high, then you have things like Manumos, Cross Combat, you know. We have the low power that.
It is kind of like the same man, and it's just different name for the same kind of thing.
And last but not least, I just want to say to all the men who saw me, call me, and ask for a piece of cake. I'm baking this weekend.
Join us Fridays at 8 on GBN Television, K105 FM. GBN's Facebook page and YouTube channel for We Culture.
No, that's not how you cross the pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver, indicating that you want to cross.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to the point for today, Thursday, the 29th day of June. We have the Community Relations Department with me this morning. Officers, welcome back. Now, our next segment of the conversation, we want to talk about noise from vehicle. How does the Community Relations Department view that, and what are, of course, some of the advice you'd like to throw pertaining to that?
Yes, so Section 21 of the Act speaks about excessive noise from vehicles. And it says, any person who without written permission from the Commissioner of Police drives or permits to be driven a motor vehicle on a road when that vehicle makes excessive noise from its engine, exhaust, radio, tape deck, air horn, or any other part or equipment attached, whether such equipment is built into the vehicle or not, and whether for the reproduction of music, speech, other sound, or otherwise commits an offense. And a lot of things would be running through your mind when you hear that, because a lot of people, we do hope, who didn't recognize that they were committing an offense before. I believe that you should take note. Although it says that ignorance of the law is not an excuse, but if you did it in the past without knowing and you were not yet charged, you should use that as your warning. And what we are saying here is that we understand that it's a challenge for the police. But at the same time, we know that more can be done. And how more can be done is with the assistance of the general population out there, the people who are affected. And we have seen it happen and continue to happen with not only the noise, but with a number of offenses. Based on our close knitted community, we feel so attached to some people who are doing us injustice, is that we are afraid to really report matters that are really touching and really, important towards having a more healthy nation. And so it becomes a challenge for the police officers who are not there, or who may be out on the streets from time to time and see those vehicles passing, but they would lower down the music when they see the officer. But in the absence of the police, they would turn up the sounds, and it would affect you. As you were saying earlier on, in the night, sometimes you can't even rest peacefully, especially when you live close to the main road, because those inconsiderate, motorists would turn up the songs to their own fancy and without consideration for any other person, and they are committing an offense. But how far have we gotten in terms of dealing and attacking this situation? We haven't gotten very far, because someone would call. Most times they wouldn't give their names, and they would say that they observe a vehicle pass last night in the neighborhood, or they would give the vehicle number, but where is the evidence? Where is the evidence? And then it's a challenge for the police.
Is it possible for let's for example, someone told you, well, vehicle number XYZ has amplified music with it. Could it possibly where the police could go to that particular person, ask them, maybe turn up your music, let me hear what you have in there?
Yes.
Is that a process can that actually happen?
It can happen, but even if the person turn up, did you know that was the person that turned up on that night? You see, it's a bit more technical than we actually view it. And then again, there are the traffic laws in relation to music is a bit different in that we have conditions for the public service vehicles.
Okay.
Right? So the public service vehicles, it would be one thing if you go and you inspect the vehicles and you find they have the systems in place. But the private vehicles, they would have the system in place, but it would be a challenge to really say, okay, was this volume really loud that night, and the reasonableness? But we need you as the citizens to come give the statement, because you was the one who experienced it, you was the one who were there, and let us use that evidence to try to get a successful prosecution, successful outcome.
How can individuals, especially community, produce the evidence to you? Make a video or whatever, produce, tell me.
If I may chime in here, evidence in these matters are generally the same as evidence in any other case, and there are a lot of instances where you cannot present anything physical to the court. But if you're giving evidence that to the court is credible, that your evidence is believable, that is sufficient. Most times you hear a defense attorney would say is his word against my clients, right? But if you have a witness that is truthful, that is believed by the court to be truthful, that is enough to get a conviction, right? As the corporal was saying, if you're not willing to come forward and do that, the most the police can do is speak to that person and say, listen, you need to control your music when you're playing and so forth, right? Because in the first place, we do get a lot of false complaints, okay? I personally have proven false complaints before.
Individuals being malicious by calling and complaining.
Somebody may have something against that particular individual. Sometimes, sadly, jealousy causes people to say things about other people that are not correct. So if you were to say to us, this person was doing X last night, you're not willing to come forward and sign to that. Sometimes it's difficult for the police to act on it. Right, so the most we can do is speak to that person.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but sometimes the process is some folks may be frightened of confrontation after. So you go talk to the police about me and stuff like that. You understand? So sometimes it could be the reason why individual may fail to give their name or may fail to give other information that could be credible for some form of prosecution for that individual, who is being causing the annoyance, especially when it comes to vehicles, especially when it comes to private vehicles. You understand? And I think it's becoming a problem where we see it's happening. Folks are driving on the roads and will just turn their music up to, extravagant loudness. You understand?
The point you just made is, I believe, that is my personal opinion. That is one of the things that is causing decay in our communities, because persons are afraid to come forward, to stand up to certain individuals. But I tend to ask people, sometimes when they make these statements that they don't want to have confrontation and so on, I say, if the person steals something very expensive from you, would you say that you don't want to come forward because of avoiding confrontation? If the person causes harm to you,
it's like a different circumstances altogether.
I understand, but the general concept is that you should not be afraid to come forward because of how people might think of you or what they might say about you, right? Because that is helping to, as we say, mess up our society.
All right. We only have approximately about 10 more minutes left on the show. Let's take some calls, see what the viewing and listening public has to offer this morning. Let's go to this first caller. Caller, good morning.
Good morning. What I want to say is that usually I just be very puzzled with the lawmakers, because most times they make laws, but the implementation is not there. So laws become lawless when you don't implement those laws, and people don't obey, because you complain about it doing the things that is not right, and you all said it to come forth, and when you're looking forward to hear the laws and measures implement, it doesn't, and that is where the problem lies most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for your contribution for this morning. I'm not sure if anyone will respond to the caller, but there's a question that's been posted by someone via the Facebook page, and they're saying now that we get into the carnival season, and I've been hearing a lot about the jab mostly every week, and the blowing of the shell and the drums and the loud chanting. What is the regulation or penalties for activities of that nature?
So if we're speaking about the noise, it falls squarely under what we explained. Any form of noise whatsoever. Once it constitutes a nuisance, it's an offense. All right. The difficulty is, in circumstances like these, first of all, narrowing down who might be the individual making the noise. So you have a large group of persons playing jab. It may not be very easy. I'm not saying that you cannot, but it may not be very easy to determine this one is the one blowing the shell, this one is the one blowing a horn and so forth. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And again, it comes back to the members of the community who witness or experience those things being willing to come forward.
Okay. All right. Let's take another caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Telesford. Greetings. Pardon the molestation. But it bleeds me to know, listening to a whole hour of conversation from your, should I say greetings to your guest there. I haven't heard yet what I expect to hear. I've heard repeated the word reasonable noise. Now, pay attention. What is reason to the man who drives his car floating around on wheels, shaking people's cupboards in the night, shaking the windows? They're passing on the road, People who remove their brush cutter, exhaust systems and so on and blast out 6 o'clock in the morning. All this happen. No, is that reasonable for them? Yes, obviously. But it's quite unreasonable for me. Sometimes 200 to 300% more than what is established. What I'm trying to say here, as I come down, is that there's standards, quote unquote, numerical values established for noise pollution. Established 60 to 70 decibels. My question, therefore, does the police know that in this modern time, 2023, there exists equipment for measuring noise, and so we get this word reasonable out of the way because it's extremely subjective. You will never be able to safely prosecute anybody for that. This is the time we have to get into the technicalities of the modern time. You find wherever it's there on the market meters so that you can have objective means of measuring noise level, and so you can effect genuine control on heavy equipment, or vehicles running on the road, or people playing the music, etc. There are means of measuring them, and there's standard numerical values, because this is indeed a public health matter. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Will you, gentlemen?
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much for your contribution, as always. Any response to the caller?
Yes, thank you very much for your call, for your contribution, sir. We would be very grateful to have those instruments. We are aware of them, but of course, whether or not they're provided is a question. So, in the absence of those equipment, what we advise people to do is, and that's what we're in the process of trying to educate the entire police force on how to execute the authorities provided by this act. And one of the advices that we give is that you try to assess the distance from which you can hear that music, speaking specifically of music now. So, for example, the police receives a complaint and you're approaching the area. Listen carefully and determine how far away you can hear that music. And that would assist the court in determining whether or not that song was unreasonable. All right? So it's an objective test. It's not subjective to the individual himself. The court will ask itself, in a general sense, to the reasonable person, was this music loud being heard from 200 meters away? And if the answer is yes, then it is considered an offense.
Okay.
Right? So until we can acquire those equipment that the caller spoke of, we have to use those types of measures.
All right. I hope next time we have a conversation, you probably tell us that the equipment are available.
All right. It's my hope as well.
All right. Before we entertain the caller, I have a caller on hold. Just hold 1 minute, caller. Someone is saying via the Facebook page, they're saying that their mom is unwell and her neighbor plays music loud every single day. What should she do?
Complain to the police. And do not cease to complain. If you complain twice, 3 times, and you didn't get the satisfaction you're looking for, it is not reason for you to get frustrated and stop complaining. In fact, you complain to the station twice, 3 times, no satisfaction. Speak to somebody in authority at that station or elsewhere. All right? The Community Relations Department is the department responsible for investigating police officers.
Yeah.
A police officer who may be accused of misbehaving, a police station accused of not carrying out their responsibilities, and so forth. So after you've complained a few times and you haven't gotten satisfaction, you complain to Community Relations Department that you are not getting satisfaction from this police station, and we will look into the matter and ensure that the station does what they're supposed to do.
All right, caller. Good morning. Sorry for having you on hold that long. Good morning.
Morning, GT, and morning to the officers. I was going to raise the issue that the last caller made in terms of the reasonableness. And I think that is one of the problems why the law have never been fully complied with. We need to move towards having specific, levels or measurements. So I would endorse that. But also I would suggest that we revise the law, we renew the law to make it more cohesive and more, enforceable, because there are quite a few loopholes in it. Additionally, the problem with the fact that we need to help our people to become more law-abiding and more respectful to one another, this is lacking. And also, the police said something which I want to endorse, that people abuse because they may have some spite against the neighbor. And I have been a victim of that, where the police later discovered after many reports were made on me that it wasn't actually true. So where somebody would report on you unnecessarily, when you're not a practitioner of playing loud stuff at all. So I think something needs to be done for the people who abuse the police, the reporting system, because that happened. And finally, if we could really find a way to educate people more on the consequences of law noise, because what we have now is a set of deaf people who came out of the mid 80s and early 90s and so on, with all the what you used to call the blockos and so on, have a lot of deaf people around. So we will have a whole set of deaf nation walking around sooner or later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for your contribution as always. We still probably can entertain maybe another caller before we actually summarize our conversation this morning, if someone really comes in really quick. I'm looking at the Facebook page, not seeing any other comment there that needs to be thrown out. Let me take a quick peek at the WhatsApp. Let me see if there's any information This individual is saying that the police station at Caranach, people call to complain about the noise, which is almost every night, and he's saying that nothing has been done. That someone is on the WhatsApp. Let's take the final caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, sir. My question is to Officer Corporal Noel. He talked about music being played, one DJ at one side of the road, another DJ very close by. I don't know if you're familiar with Latant Junction. It's mayhem there, Juve morning. What are the stipulations in that situation?
All right, thank you, caller. Officers, anybody want to respond?
Yes, although the caller mentioned Corporal, in fact, I was the person who mentioned the DJs on either side of the road. Unfortunately, during Carnival days, the Noise Pollution Act is silent.
Okay.
All right, so we cannot enforce those regulations on Carnival days.
It's generally permitted.
Yes.
All right.
Just to add to what ASP Douglas said, we don't want people to be of the opinion that when he said Carnival days, he only mean Carnival days actually, Monday and Tuesday.
Right.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yeah,
only
folks get into the mood that Carnival starts from July, so they can do this every time and should get away with it.
The actual Carnival days. Now, there's a difference between Carnival season and Carnival days.
Okay,
right? Carnival days are I believe, is the second Monday
and Tuesday
of August.
All right. Officers, we get into that stage of the morning. Any final comments you want to make, or just summarize on our conversation this morning before we take a wrap for today?
Yes. We'd like to just remind the general public that the Noise Control Act, it's one that was legislated to have people enjoying their homes. A lot of people retire from their jobs and so on. A lot of people serve in the army. A lot of people who are DJs like you in the past would now like to retire home and rest peacefully in their own comfort. And we want to encourage, our citizens to stop being selfish and consider your neighbor. Consider the person who is unwell. Consider the person who worked last night, the security guards, the nurses, the police officers who do the night shift, and have some consideration. Yes, we know that you have your events. Most of the time you want to make money, but the volume can be played moderately. Or even the people in the houses, who just play the music unnecessarily loud. We want you to use this opportunity to consider your action as very irresponsible. And so this is the opportunity for you to make that turnaround and to be considerate and make your contribution towards nation building and development. We consider it as a public health issue. And so the police, we are making this special appeal to you to change your attitude.
All right. SP Douglas?
Yes. Well, Corporal Noel has said so much, I don't think there's much left for me to say as a wrap up. But just to remind persons that we were asking of you to be persistent in your quest to deal with those issues. So if you've complained once or twice, do not get frustrated. Continue to make the complaints. As I said, reach out to a senior person, reach out to the community relations department if you're not getting satisfaction from the stations. The community as a whole has a responsibility for the peace and quiet of the community. And if every member of the community come together and work against the persons who disturb the community, I guarantee it's going to be a lot easier to get it done. But what we have is a few people calling or a few people working on the issue and everyone else sitting quietly, even if they're seriously affected. A lot of persons sit back and say, I am not bothering. Right? It could be based on who the person is. Either they're afraid of the person or they may be connected to that person, a family member or a friend, and they're not bold enough to come forward and say to that person, listen, you need to make adjustments. This is causing a problem. Right? In most cases, you may not even need to report to the police after 3-4 neighbors speak to that person and let them know, listen, we cannot have this in the community.
Yes.
Right? So that is my advice to us. And of course, finally, to endorse what was said by Corporal Noel, that everyone needs to be reasonable in their actions.
All right. So true. I want to thank you, both officers, once again. Thank you for popping in this morning and sharing information. I certainly hope it was definitely fruitful information, and that folks will take the necessary steps to do the right thing, especially when it comes to obtaining they're making the necessary application process, the information that they need to of course provide. You provide that, the conditions that you will be getting your permit, that you follow through on it, and make sure all is well in terms of event. I want to thank you folks once again. Thanks to all who contributed to being part to the point this morning. Join us again for another edition tomorrow. Be good to yourself and others. Have yourself a great day.